There are stories that live in the shadows of music history, songs whispered about but never heard. But when it comes to Michael Jackson, the king of pop, one rumor rises above all others. Not about his moonwalk, not about his record-breaking albums, not even about his endless string of controversies. No, this one is different. This is the story of a song, one track, buried so deep that the world was never allowed to hear it. They say it wasn't just another demo, another unfinished idea sitting in a studio reel. No, this song was dangerous. Dangerous not because of its sound, but because of its words, because of what Michael was trying to say. Imagine it. Michael Jackson, alone in the studio, late into the night. The lights dim, the tape rolling, his voice raw, vulnerable, unguarded. He's not singing to entertain. He's not chasing radio play. He's confessing, exposing, revealing truths that some people did not want to be revealed. For decades, whispers have circulated about this track, industry insiders who claim to have heard it once, only to see it locked away forever. Executives who panicked at the thought of it reaching the public. Family members who hint at a secret too heavy to share, fans who swear Michael left us more than we know, hidden behind the walls of his vast vault of unreleased music. But here is the haunting question. Why was this song silenced? Why, in a career filled with controversy and fearless expression, was this the one piece Michael Jackson, or those around him, believed the world could not hear? Was it buried because of corporate fear? Because it named names too powerful to confront? Or was it silenced because Michael himself knew that if it were released, it could change everything? Tonight, we're going to step into the shadows of that silence. We're going to peel back the layers of rumor, betrayal, and mystery surrounding a song that may very well hold the key to understanding Michael Jackson's final years. But beware, because once you hear this story, you'll never listen to his music the same way again. And the deeper we go, the more chilling the truth becomes. Long before the whispers of this one forbidden track, fans knew that Michael Jackson recorded obsessively. He wasn't just a perfectionist, he was relentless. For every song the world heard, Billie Jean, Smooth Criminal, Black or White, there were dozens that never left the studio. Ideas, drafts, alternate takes. The man lived inside music, and because of that, the legend of the vault was born. It's said to contain thousands of recordings, demos stretching back to his teenage years, full albums never released, collaborations with artists whose names alone would set headlines ablaze. After Michael's death in 2009, the vault became the holy grail of pop culture mysteries. What treasures were in there? What secrets? Over the years, a few tracks trickled out, unreleased songs packaged into posthumous albums, sometimes polished, sometimes raw. And yet, each release only deepened the hunger, the obsession. Because if these songs were left behind, what else was hidden? What else was too powerful to share? And then, amid all the speculation, a single thread began to emerge. Rumors of one song that was different. A track Michael had not only recorded but finished. A song that didn't just stay in the vault because of timing or because it wasn't commercial enough. No, this one was locked away, deliberately. Industry insiders whispered about it in hushed tones. Executives avoided the question when pressed. Those who claimed to have heard it described it with vague, almost fearful words. Dangerous, too real, too honest. Unlike the playful demos or the forgotten ballads, this track carried weight. It wasn't about perfection. It was about protection. Protection of reputations. Protection of power. Maybe even protection of Michael himself. And that is where the myth began to harden into something darker. Because when Michael wanted something hidden, there was usually a reason. He was a man who thrived on spectacle, on breaking barriers, on challenging the world to confront uncomfortable truths. Think of They Don't Care About Us. Think of Earth Song. He didn't run from controversy. He ran toward it. So why this silence? Why, out of thousands of recordings, does this one song linger like a ghost in the shadows of his career? Some say it was the most powerful track he ever created. Others believe it was so raw, so unfiltered, that releasing it would have set off a chain reaction the industry couldn't contain. But one thing is certain, the vault doesn't just hold music, it holds secrets, and this secret was never meant to escape. The question is, what did Michael put into that track that scared them all? To answer that, we need to step inside Michael's world, the recording studio. For most artists, the studio is a workplace. For Michael, it was something more. It was his sanctuary, his confession booth, his battlefield. He would spend endless nights there, often recording in near darkness. No crowd, no cameras, just him, the microphone, and the hum of tape rolling. He poured himself into every note, pushing collaborators to exhaustion, chasing sounds only he could hear in his head. And those who worked alongside him knew something most fans did not. When Michael recorded, he recorded everything. Not just polished vocals, but raw emotions, private thoughts, even improvised rants that blurred the line between song and testimony. It was in this environment that the forbidden track was born. Late sessions, whispers in the control room, engineers who wouldn't talk about what they'd heard. One producer, speaking years later, admitted, "Michael didn't always want to make hits. Sometimes he wanted to tell the truth, and the truth scared people. This wasn't about perfectionism. It wasn't about scrapping an idea that didn't quite work. No, this was different. Because those close to him said Michael believed the song carried a weight, a danger. Imagine the atmosphere in that studio. Michael's voice sharp, emotional, his words striking chords that no one expected. The energy shifting from excitement to unease. Collaborators exchanging nervous glances, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Can this ever be released? Because here's the thing about Michael Jackson. His fame wasn't just a gift. It was a curse. Every word he spoke, every lyric he sang, every choice he made was magnified. And if this song truly contained accusations or revelations about the industry, it would not just make headlines. It could destroy careers. It could shatter empires. So the decision was made. Quietly. The track would remain locked away. But there was another layer to this silence. Some whispered that Michael himself wasn't sure. That part of him wanted the song to be heard, but another part feared the consequences. After all, the closer he got to the truth, the more isolated he became, the more dangerous his world felt, and that's what makes the mystery of this song so chilling. It wasn't just suppressed by faceless executives, it may have been suppressed by Michael Jackson himself. Still, the whispers didn't stop, because those who were there swore that if the world ever heard those words, everything we thought we knew about Michael's fight with the industry would change. And that leaves us with the question no one can shake. Was he protecting himself, or was he protecting us? What could a song possibly contain that would terrify some of the most powerful people in the world? To answer that, we need to turn to Michael's history with lyrics. Michael wasn't afraid of controversy. He sang about poverty, about racism, about the destruction of the planet. He accused governments, corporations, and the media of lies. His songs were protest chants wrapped in rhythm and melody, delivered, not by a rebel on the street, but by the most famous entertainer alive. That alone was power. But this time, insiders say the lyrics cut sharper. Unlike They Don't Care About Us, which painted a broad picture of oppression, or money, which pointed at greed in general terms, this track was rumored to be something else entirely. It was said to be direct, personal, targeted. Not a metaphor, not a parable, but an accusation written in plain sight. One insider described it in a single chilling sentence. It was Michael saying out loud what everyone else only dared whisper. According to whispers, the lyrics mentioned corruption at the highest levels of the music industry. They didn't paint villains as faceless figures in shadow. They hinted at real people, executives, moguls, even institutions that profited off his name while tightening a noose around his freedom. Michael had been outspoken before. He told fans in public rallies that there was a conspiracy against him. He called out Sony's then head, Tommy Mottola, accusing him of racism and exploitation. But those were speeches, isolated words thrown into the storm. This song, however, was permanent. Once it hit the airwaves, it could not be unsaid, could not be taken back. It would live forever, not as a soundbite, but as a work of art. And that made it unstoppable. The thought of Michael Jackson, an artist with global reach, adored across continents, pointing a lyrical finger directly at powerful figures was something the industry could not allow. Imagine the fallout. Stock prices plummeting, contracts collapsing, careers ruined overnight. If the king of pop claimed betrayal, millions would believe him. Billions would question the system. But it wasn't only the industry that had reason to fear. Michael himself was living under the weight of endless attacks, legal battles, tabloid onslaughts, betrayals from within his own circle. To record a song like this wasn't just brave, it was dangerous. It was like lighting a match while standing in a room soaked with gasoline. There are claims the lyrics contained references to betrayal by people he trusted. Not just faceless executives, but collaborators, advisors, maybe even family. And if that's true, then this wasn't just about industry corruption. It was personal, and here's the chilling part. The more he sang, the more exposed he became. The walls of that studio may have felt safe, but every reel of tape, every line of lyric was a ticking time bomb. Anyone who heard it could carry the secret. Anyone who carried the secret could decide to use it. One engineer supposedly remarked years later, "You didn't just listen to it. You felt the danger in the room. It was like we all knew we weren't supposed to hear those words, so the decision was made. This track could not escape, and that left the world with a haunting silence. Because while we know Michael gave us protest anthems before, this one was different. This was the one that frightened them, not because of speculation, not because of metaphor, but because it might have told the truth too directly. But who exactly was them? Who had the power to silence Michael Jackson, and who had the most to lose if this song ever reached us? That brings us to the darkest chapter of all, betrayal. Michael Jackson's life was defined by contradictions. The brightest spotlight in the world, and the darkest shadows lurking behind it. The love of millions, and the betrayal of those closest to him. To understand why a song might be buried, you have to understand the betrayals that haunted him in his final years. Because betrayal wasn't just a theme in his life, it was a constant rhythm, pounding underneath everything he created. Michael fought bitterly with the music industry. His battle with Sony over the ownership of his masters became a war of attrition. He accused executives of trying to destroy him. He even told fans that the industry was a machine designed to exploit artists and then discard them. But betrayal didn't stop at boardrooms. Some of the very people who claimed to love him, advisors, employees, even friends, were accused of selling stories to the press, leaking private information, or turning against him when money was involved. Michael's wealth and fame made him a target. His trust was a currency that people traded, and he knew it. He felt it. He once said, "The higher I went, the lonelier it became. Everyone wants a piece of Michael Jackson." It is within this context that the forbidden song begins to make sense. If Michael poured his rage, his heartbreak, his sense of betrayal into those lyrics, then the song wasn't just art. It was evidence. Evidence of how he felt. Evidence of the forces aligned against him. Evidence of the pain inflicted not only by faceless executives, but by those who sat in his home, shared his table, stood beside him on stage. And that kind of evidence was dangerous, because it didn't just accuse, it named. Think about the risk. If he accused powerful executives, their careers could implode. If he pointed at insiders or allies, families could fracture. And if he revealed secrets no one was supposed to know, it could spark wars in courtrooms, in boardrooms, and even in public opinion. Michael had already learned the price of speaking too plainly. Every time he challenged the system struck back harder. Every time he pulled the curtain, the attacks intensified. So if this song truly captured his raw anger, if it revealed betrayal in unfiltered words, it wasn't just a track. It was a weapon. And weapons in the wrong hands can destroy everything. There are those who believe this is why the betrayal cut even deeper. Because the people who convinced Michael to silence this track weren't faceless strangers. They were people he trusted, advisors, collaborators, maybe even friends who warned him. This could ruin you. But was it protection, or was it manipulation? Did they silence him to keep him safe, or to keep themselves safe? That question lingers like smoke after fire, because the history of Michael Jackson is a history of being silenced, restrained, contained. The man who sang of freedom, who danced with abandon, who broke chains with every performance, was constantly bound by invisible contracts, invisible betrayals, invisible cages. And this song, this forbidden track, was perhaps the loudest scream he never allowed to leave his throat. But what if he wanted it silenced? What if the betrayal was not just external, but internal? Michael fighting himself, torn between truth and survival. Because if the song had escaped the studio, it wouldn't just have changed how we saw the music industry. It could have changed how we saw Michael Jackson himself, and that leads us to the question that may never be answered. Did Michael silence the song to protect the world from the truth, or to protect the truth from the world? Not every legend is built on silence alone. Sometimes it's built on whispers, tiny fragments of sound, scattered through the world like pieces of a broken mirror. That's how the story of Michael's forbidden track lives on. Not through official release, not through liner notes or leaks, but through fleeting testimonies. People who swear they've heard it, if only once, and never again. One rumor begins in Los Angeles, in a studio engineer's recollection. He claims that after Michael left the room, the tape kept playing, and in that moment, he heard a version of Michael that unsettled him deeply, raw, unfiltered, filled with venom instead of velvet. He never described the lyrics in detail, but he admitted years later, "I wish I hadn't heard it." Because once you did, you knew why it had to be buried. Another whisper comes from Europe. A producer close to Michael in the mid-90s allegedly played a snippet of an unreleased track to a trusted friend. That friend described the sound as haunting. Michael, but angrier than I'd ever imagined him. Not screaming, not pleading, just telling the truth. And you felt like you weren't supposed to be listening. But the problem with whispers is that they're never the same. Some say the track is explosive and fast, a rhythmic confession that feels like fire. Others insist it's a slow ballad, Michael's voice trembling with despair. Some claim it was recorded during Dangerous, others swear it belongs to the Invincible sessions. No two stories align. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the confusion is deliberate, designed to blur the truth so completely that no one can ever know for sure. But the obsession doesn't end there. Fans have chased fragments, desperate for proof. They've dissected every leak, every demo, every unfinished cut that slipped online after Michael's passing. They've compared notes on forums, cross-referenced timelines, even tried to reconstruct lyrics based on alleged memories of those who claim to hear it. And then, the strangest detail, some swear they've caught hints of the forbidden track hidden in plain sight. A vocal run here, a line in a demo there, snippets Michael might have folded into other recordings, as if leaving breadcrumbs for those who would one day listen close enough. It all leads to one haunting idea. Maybe the song isn't just locked away. Maybe it was deliberately scattered, broken into pieces only the most devoted could stitch back together. But whether real or imagined, the whispers refuse to die. In fact, they've only grown louder. And with each passing year, the myth takes on a life of its own. Because the greatest power a song can have is not in being played. It's in being silenced. And the silence around this track has made it larger than any release could. Yet one question always remains. If fragments exist, if whispers tell of its power, then where is the recording itself? Locked away, hidden, guarded, but by who? To answer that, we have to follow the paper trail. Because when Michael Jackson died in 2009, his music didn't die with him. It became property, contested, fought over, dissected in boardrooms and courtrooms, and that's where the story of the forbidden track takes its sharpest. Turn, Michael's unreleased music, everything in that mythical vault was controlled first by Sony and later through the Jackson estate. From the beginning, there was tension. Posthumous albums like Michael and Escape gave the world glimpses of hidden recordings. But even those were carefully chosen, remixed, reproduced, sometimes even doubted as authentic. What they revealed wasn't just music. They revealed control. Decisions about what the world could hear weren't made by Michael anymore. They were made by corporations and estates with billions at stake, and so the forbidden track remained locked away. Not lost, not forgotten, but deliberately contained. There are stories of archives, climate-controlled rooms where hard drives and tapes sit in silence. Every note Michael ever recorded, cataloged, digitized, numbered. And in those vaults may lie the very track that frightened them all. But here's where the conspiracy deepens. Some believe the song isn't simply withheld. They claim it's been deliberately erased, destroyed, or hidden behind legal barriers that make its release impossible. Because releasing it wouldn't just be about music, it would be about money, reputation, and risk. If the lyrics truly contained accusations, if they pointed fingers at executives, corporations, or even family members, then releasing the track could open the floodgates to lawsuits, scandals, and damage to brands still profiting from Michael's name. It wouldn't just be controversial, it would be catastrophic, and so the lock remains. The key, however, is harder to trace. Some believe only Sony executives know its true location. Others think Michael's family holds it in secret, too frightened or too protective to let it out. A few whisper that Michael himself ensured it could never surface, leaving instructions to bury it deeper than any lawyer could reach. What makes this story even more chilling is the thought that the key may already be gone. If those tapes were destroyed, if those files were corrupted, then the track doesn't just remain locked, it's erased from existence, leaving behind only the myth. But if that's true, why do the whispers persist? Why do so many insist they've heard it, if only for a moment? Why do fans still believe it lingers, waiting to be uncovered? Because maybe the song was never meant to be found in boardrooms or estates. Maybe Michael left the key somewhere else entirely. Maybe the song survives, hidden in fragments, buried in demos, scattered across sessions like a message in a bottle. Or maybe it waits in silence, intact, locked away in a vault so secure that only time will force it open. And here lies the question that keeps fans awake at night. If the track still exists, and if the vault ever opens, what exactly will we hear? There is something about Michael Jackson's voice that defies time. Even now, years after his passing, a single note can raise goosebumps. A whispered breath can feel like a revelation. It wasn't just sound, it was presence. Michael's voice carried contradictions. At times, it was fragile, trembling like a confession spoken in private. At others, it was explosive, roaring like a prophet calling the world to attention. It could make you dance. It could make you cry. It could make you confront things you'd rather ignore, and this is where the legend of the forbidden track becomes even more haunting. Because if the song truly exists, then somewhere, locked in silence, lies a recording of that voice, one the world has never been allowed to hear. Imagine it. A Michael Jackson vocal not smoothed by producers, not polished for the radio, but untouched, unfiltered, and armed with words too dangerous for daylight. The echo of his voice, captured in a song that may never leave its cage. Those who claim to have heard fragments describe the performance as chilling. Not because he sang poorly, Michael never sang poorly, but because of the emotion behind it. One engineer allegedly said, "It wasn't the Michael the world knew. It was the Michael only a handful of us ever saw, angry, heartbroken, and unafraid." That detail alone is staggering. For decades, Michael built an image of magic and innocence. He was the entertainer who wanted to heal the world, who turned pain into melody. But in this track, insiders suggest, the mask was gone. The echo of his voice revealed not the king of pop, but the man. Cornered, betrayed, and desperate to tell the truth, and perhaps that's why it remains silenced. Because what happens when an artist known for universal joy suddenly delivers something brutally personal, even accusatory? What happens when the world's most beloved performer stops singing to entertain and starts singing to warn? The answer could be chaos, fans divided, reputation shattered, Legacies rewritten, but silence only fuels imagination. And imagination can be louder than sound. For every year the track remains unheard, the echo of Michael's voice grows stronger in the minds of those who chase it. They wonder what the timbre would be, what notes he would hit, what emotions he would unleash. They imagine tears in his tone, fury in his breath, whispers that feel like confessions meant only for us. And that imagination is unstoppable. Because once you picture Michael Jackson, alone, pouring out words too sharp to release, you cannot forget it. Some say the greatest tragedy isn't that the song is hidden. The greatest tragedy is that Michael's voice is still speaking. But we can't hear it, or maybe we weren't meant to. And that leads us into another obsession entirely, the people who refuse to let silence win. If there is one force as powerful as Michael Jackson's voice, it is his fans, loyal, relentless, global. From the moment whispers of the forbidden track began, fans became detectives. They dug through archives, hunted for leaks, analyzed every demo that surfaced online. No snippet was too small, no rumor too wild. On forums across the world, theories multiplied like wildfire. Some fans claim they've identified clues, hidden messages in liner notes, mysterious catalog numbers, unexplained gaps in recording logs. Others insist the track has already leaked in disguise, buried inside mislabeled demos, waiting for someone sharp enough to recognize it. In the digital age, obsession turned forensic. Fans slowed down recordings, reversed audio, compared vocal inflections across decades. They hunted for fingerprints of truth, and sometimes they swore they found them. One theory argues that a short clip circulating on obscure file-sharing sites in the early 2010s is actually a fragment of the forbidden track, an unfinished version, stripped of instrumentation, just Michael's raw voice. The clip is only seconds long, and authenticity has never been proven. But for those who believe, it was enough to prove the song exists, enough to ignite endless debates over every syllable, every note. But obsession carries danger. Fans who plunge too deep into the mystery sometimes blur the line between fact and fiction. Conspiracies sprout like weeds. Some insist the track holds a coded message, that Michael predicted his own downfall or even his death. Others believe the industry suppresses it because it confirms the conspiracy he warned about publicly. The deeper they dig, the darker it gets. And yet they keep searching, because silence is unbearable. Silence is a challenge, and maybe that's what Michael wanted. Maybe he left the trail deliberately, knowing his most loyal would never stop looking. Maybe he scattered fragments as a test, as a way to make sure the truth could never be fully buried. For fans, the obsession is not just about hearing one more song, it's about connection. About believing Michael left them a secret, a message meant only for those willing to chase it. But here is the haunting part. What if the search itself is the trap? What if the forbidden track isn't just locked away in a vault, but locked away in our minds, growing larger with every theory, every rumor, every late-night debate? What if the obsession says more about us than about Michael? Because obsession can build myths, and myths can be just as dangerous as truths. And so the fans keep chasing. The whispers keep spreading. The legend keeps growing, but behind it all remains the same unanswered question. Are the fans searching for a song that exists, or one that was never meant to exist at all? Every legend has an enemy, and in Michael's story, that enemy has always been the industry itself. For decades, Michael Jackson spoke, sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly, about what he called the conspiracy. He accused record executives of exploitation. He warned of manipulation, control, and silencing. To many, it sounded like paranoia. To others, it sounded like truth. So if a track exists that captures Michael laying bare what he could never say in public interviews, that track is dangerous. Because music isn't like a speech. Music travels farther, lodges deeper, and leaves a permanent mark. Imagine the industry's fear. A global superstar, the best-selling artist of all time, unleashing a song that doesn't celebrate but condemns. A song that points fingers at those who made billions from his genius. A song that could ignite not just fans, but revolutions of thought. Executives had everything to lose: profits, reputations, even legacies. One chilling rumor says a legal team drafted strategies to ensure such a recording could never be distributed. No matter who inherited Michael's catalog, and maybe that's why, nearly 2 decades later, silence still reigns. Because sometimes the most effective weapon isn't censorship, it's absence, but absence has a strange power. The more the industry tries to erase, the louder the ghost of the song becomes. And as we edge closer to the heart of this mystery, we confront a terrifying possibility. The forbidden track doesn't just hold Michael's voice. It holds the industry's deepest fear. The deeper we look, the clearer it becomes. This isn't just about music. It's about legacy, ownership, and control. Michael once said, "The history books are lies. You need to know the truth." Was that truth hidden in his lyrics? Some insiders whisper that the track was Michael's attempt to reclaim his story, to set the record straight before it was too late, to reveal betrayal by those closest to him, friends who became enemies, allies who became opportunists. Others suggest it's even darker, that the track doesn't just reveal his pain, it predicts his fate. Lines allegedly reference being silenced, watched, and destroyed. Whether coincidence or prophecy, fans who've studied his public struggles hear the echoes of truth. And yet, no matter how many fragments surface, no matter how many rumors persist, the song itself remains locked away. Here lies the paradox. If the truth is too dangerous to release, is it safer to believe in the myth? Or is the myth itself a kind of prison, ensuring Michael's voice remains unheard while his fans endlessly chase shadows? What is more powerful, the truth itself or the legend of the truth? The answer lies in the climax of this mystery. And here we stand, on the edge of revelation. Imagine a vault. Somewhere in Los Angeles or New York or perhaps overseas, a climate-controlled chamber holds reels of tape with Michael's handwriting scrawled across them. Demos, experiments, unfinished melodies. Among them, one tape different from the rest. Marked, restricted, sealed. If you press play, what would you hear? Those who claim to know speak carefully, almost fearfully. They say the track opens not with music, but with silence, then a breath, long and shaking. Michael's voice enters like a whisper, vulnerable but charged, as though he knows he's about to cross a line he can't return from. Then it grows. Not the playful Michael of Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, not the messianic Michael of Earth Song, but something raw, almost unrecognizable. A man stripped of illusions, a man standing against giants. The lyrics, they say, speak of betrayal, of control, of invisible chains. He names no names, but the shadows are unmistakable. Every line feels like a dagger, at the industry, at the system, at those who profited while he bled. The chorus is rumored to be devastating. A cry, not a melody. Not polished for radio, not crafted for charts. Just truth, unguarded and undeniable. And that is why, according to whispers, the song was buried. Because if the world heard Michael without the glitter, without the mask, without the fantasy, it would change everything. It would prove he knew. It would prove he tried to warn us, and yet the greatest twist of all may be this. The song shouldn't exist. Michael was always cautious, always strategic. For him to record something so revealing, so dangerous, goes against everything he practiced. Did he truly mean for it to survive? Or was it a slip, an outpouring he never intended the world to hear? Maybe that's the real reason it stays hidden, not just because the industry fears it, not just because fans obsess over it, but because Michael himself didn't want it released. The track exists as a paradox, too powerful to destroy, too dangerous to reveal, and so it lingers in silence. The story of the forbidden track is more than music. It's about what we choose to believe. Did Michael Jackson truly leave behind a song too dangerous for the world? Or have we, his fans, created the myth we need? A myth that keeps his voice alive, endlessly echoing in the silence he left behind. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Perhaps the song does exist, waiting in a vault for the day it can finally speak. Or perhaps it exists only in us, in the obsession, in the longing, in the way we can't let go of the idea that Michael still has one more thing to say. And maybe that's the point. The greatest track the world was never allowed to hear might not be a sound on tape. It might be the silence itself. The silence that keeps us listening. searching, believing. Because as long as the forbidden track remains hidden, Michael Jackson's voice is never truly gone. The echo continues.